Dr. Qanta Ahmed. She's the author of In the Land of Invisible Women and a Muslim scholar. Doctor, we've been watching this, we hope is the culmination of a three-day manhunt with these two terrorists. They seem to be somewhat in control. They do have a hostage right now. Is time on our side, or is the message getting stronger the longer they last?
Really, I think that we are very behind the ball game with our war against Islamism. It's time for the United States, Western democracies, Britain, France, to admit that we are under siege by an ideology called Islamism. All Islamists are Muslim.
Why is that important to say?
That's very important. All Islamists are Muslim. I'm a Muslim, to tell you that. So this ideology is emerging from Muslims, but is a hijacking of our beliefs into a totalitarian political ideology. They seek to fell secular democracy. Those scenes of the photographs of Charlie Hebdo offices look exactly like the scenes of classrooms in Peshawar. The war is on education, the war is on freedom of speech, and by not naming it in our country or in France as Islamism, we're enabling these kinds of actions.
With the hostage, we believe is a woman. What's your inkling there in terms of what this means for these radicals? She's
in lethal danger. These, I wouldn't call them radicals, I would call them Muslim Islamists. They are absolutely hell-bent on committing as much destruction as they can.
Motivated by the Quran.
Motivated by Islamism and their distorted interpretation of the Quran. Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
When you get into terminology here, what's the danger in not using direct, specific, accurate language as it pertains to moderate Muslims?
Here's the danger, not just to moderate Muslims, but to all of us, whatever our beliefs are, is that if we don't name it, we are enabling Islamism, and that enabling is happening not just in dialogue, but right here in New York City, where we have a powerful role in the United Nations. We have seen passage of criminalization of something called defamation of Islam or Islamophobia. That is a modern construct from 1970s Iran. There are multiple resolutions now where criticizing something to do with Islam is criminalized. Charlie Hebdo's massacre occurred on that pretext.
Absolutely.
If we don't talk about it as secular pluralistic democrats, whether British, American, Muslim, non-Muslim, this is becoming more powerful.
Well, you know why here in this country, though, because it's politically correct.
Let me tell you, going to Pakistan...
And that's killing us.
You're correct. And going to Pakistan, where I've been to the northwest frontier in the Swat Valley with the Pakistani military, met with Muslims who are de-radicalizing jihadists. We do not mince our words in the Muslim world. We do not have a debate about what is a jihadist, whether he's Muslim or not. We are confronting it. And in fact, Pakistan has lost more civilians in this to Islamist terrorism than almost any other nation.
But our president tiptoes around it, doesn't want to say it. You know, in the past with Fort Hood, which was radical Islam, you know, with Major Hassan, he had a crazy view of Islam. He took the Quran and contorted it to fit his needs. Our administration referred to that as workplace violence, which was crazy, and that's a whole other thing. But our president needs to say this is a form of radical Islam, and it must be stopped.
He was slow to do it in this case.
I would agree with what you're saying, though. I have the highest regard for the president and the president's office. But by avoiding this issue, I can only imagine that it may be fear or ignorance or a false sensitivity that we're going to offend Muslims. So many Muslims in the last few days from Paris have talked to me and said, we need to do something. We want to have a dialogue.
Well, I'll give you the theory, and you know the theory. Well, we want to make it clear that we don't want a war with 6 billion Muslims around the world, and if we say Muslims, they're going to get the wrong impression.
I understand that, but I think that that's a false fear. We are 1.62 billion Muslims, and many of us are not privileged like me. Many of us are suffering at the hands of Islamist democracies or so-called democracies or Islamist dictatorships. Just, I think, yesterday or the day before, I watched General Sisi's speech, translated by memory, to Al-Azhar, the university in Cairo, which is leading Islamic universities, talking about the need to change this ideology and confront it. There's an expression in Farsi: we have reared the viper in our bosom. Islamism has emerged in the 20th century from the Muslim world, and it is a viper that is biting Muslims and non-Muslims alike. We have to strangle it.
Which goes back to centuries, the 18th century and the taking of our ships and the war against Christianity.
But also, what I can't help thinking in the last couple of days, but also I felt the same with Peshawar and the same with Sydney, where I was just days before the attack, is that where is the Churchill of our times? Churchill did not mince his words when confronting the darkest ideology that we know in living memory, and we need that kind of speech and power coming from not just Western leaders, but also Muslim leaders. We need that desperately, and many Muslims, I would say millions of them, would join us in this sentiment.
That's what General Assisi said to the imams who are leading the Muslim faith. It's up to you to change it.
Possible?
Oh yes, the clerics and the Muslim public. I would say it is possible because there is so much will behind this and so many innocent and powerless Muslims suffering. If we think about what's happened, I remember 1989, Satanic Verses. Then we have 2004, Submission movie. Then we have 2011, Danish cartoons. And yesterday we have Charlie Hebdo. So we can see that the contraction on freedom of speech is global, and this is being very much powered by the very aggressive Islamophobia policy that Islamists like. Islamists thrive if we don't talk about them, and if we mix them up with Islam, they thrive. And Islamists also thrive if we're too careful to tread because we're afraid of Islamophobia.
Right. Too many people have died because of that caution there in political correctness.
And actually, I do want to salute you as broadcasters for raising this issue. After Charlie Hebdo, you realize you are in the crosshairs of Islamists. The bravest thing that people can do at the moment is have networks and stations and dialogue like this. This is a very brave thing that you're all doing.
Well, we're doing it too, and we're hoping other people follow the same path, because it should be. It should be. All this stuff should be covered from the New York Times to the LA Times to all the other broadcast networks.
People just need to call it what it is. Dr. Qanta Ahmed, we thank you very much for joining us live here in the studio.